Türkiye boykotu tartışıyor. Muhalefet boykot istiyor. İktidar bunu çok tehlikeli buluyor, eleştiriyor. Cumhuriyet Başsavcılığı da soruşturma başlattı.
Evet, bakıyoruz. Caddedeki ekspresyoner bomboş. Sinek avlıyor. Burası da düne kadar yer bulamadığımız Caddebostan espressoler.
Boykot çağrılarına yönelik başlatılan soruşturma kapsamında 10 kişi gözaltına alındı.
On this channel, I comment on many topics that I have just learned about in the context of my own knowledge of the topics I am interested in. The concept of the channel is quite complex and varied, as the topics I am interested in have a broad scope. This is a format that YouTube doesn't usually want. Turkey is going through a terrible time right now. The majority of the country is against Recep Tayyip Erdogan. So, political party leaders and many dissidents are being jailed under various pretexts. There is an autocratic regime in the country, and the government is waging a war against the opposition. The AKP-MHP oligarchy government is using all institutions to silence the opposition. There are now fewer and fewer supporters of the Erdogan government. People are fed up. Political Islam has brought nothing but oppression and darkness to the majority in this country. There are concerns that a group of wealthy people are getting richer and social justice is in tatters.
Ecdadının kemikleri sızlıyor be zühtü, aklını topla zühtü. Şehitler olmasaydı sen var mıydın zühtü? Komüniste kanmaz zühtü, arnamus gider zühtü.
For a long time now, Turkey has been feeling more and more clearly how horrible right-wing policies are and that they work for a handful of wealthy people. University youth are calling for a public boycott to squeeze the government economically. And in a classic cliché, people close to the government have already started propaganda to portray those who participate in the boycott as traitors or terrorists. In such an environment, I will share other videos on different topics I want to make. I don't feel comfortable making videos on various issues when my country in this state. Wherever the oppression is, wherever the persecution is, that is my capital. Today, I will tell you about the phenomenon of boycott. Boycott is a concept that was named in the 19th century, but before that it was practiced in various ways to protest against the tyranny of the government. A boycott is a decision to cut off all relations with a person, a place, or a country to exert pressure to achieve a specific goal. This primarily affects economic relations. Boycott is one of the means of revolt of the oppressed against the rulers. The state, the apparatus of the rulers can take harsh measures in such revolts. Boycott leaders can be arrested. Those who call for it can be declared terrorists. The state acts against the boycott to protect the order of the corporations and the rich. The state fears general strikes and boycotts because both undermine the real purpose of the state. The real purpose of the capitalist state is to establish a system for a handful of privileged privileged rich. The massive flow of money to a handful of rich people is slowed down or stopped by boycotts and strikes. The working class and the oppressed are the main subjects of production and cheap labor. A strike, which means that they stop work, stops production. But in today's consumer society, a broad boycott would limit the cruelty of the ruling classes. The ruling classes will, of course, prefer more profit and more exploitation. The people don't see the reality of this exploitation as long as they bless the state. The eyes that bless the state have failed to understand what the state is. In this case, the ruling class's desire for profit and exploitation increases. The word boycott has a fascinating history dating back to the 19th century. The term was named after a British land administrator and has survived to the present day. The word boycott derives from an incident in Ireland in the 1880s. Captain Charles Cunningham Boycott, a retired British Army captain, was a land administrator in County Mayo, Ireland. At the time, there was great tension between landowners and farmers in Ireland. Boycott, a British captain, increased the pressure on Irish farmers and made their lives miserable. Farmers suffered from high rents and unfair land policies and demanded better conditions. As part of a movement led by the Irish Land League, the farmers led by Charles Boycott demanded a rent reduction and that the captain stop his arbitrary practices. However, Boycott rejected these demands and expelled some farmers from their land. Thereupon, with the call of the Charles Stewart Parnell, one of the leaders of the Irish Land Union, the farmers launched a massive protest movement against Captain Boycott. The most remarkable aspect of this protest movement was that it didn't involve physical violence and was carried out entirely through passive resistance. Farmers and locals completely stopped the Captain Boycott's work. Servants, laborers, and merchants refused to work with him. Even the postal service refused to serve him. This put such a strain on Boycott that he had to specially import workers from England. After that, the boycott became the name of resistance worldwide. A boycott is a form of civil resistance. It's an appropriate and effective protest for today's freedom of consumption. It is relevant today because within the consumer rights framework, people can shop where they want, and if they don't want to, they can stop shopping. It's an effective protest because it warns against oppressive dictators who abuse power. It's cutting off the sources of exploitation that feed them. Today, as capitalism colonizes all of life, the boycott is still an essential act of resistance. However, history has shown that for a boycott to be successful, most people must have political consciousness. One cannot fight against fascism in an environment where the oppressed sanctify the state.